Okay, so our last keynote speaker is probably familiar to many of you. It's Ray Troll. And Ray, I think, has a really large impact on a lot of different people, commercial fishers, recreational fishers, the lay public, scientists, as an artist, inspiring a lot of interest and intrigue in fish mostly, but in all parts of the marine environment. And then he's also become a really effective science communicator using art and science to get a lot of interest. So just for some background, Ray had a BA from Bethany College in Kansas and then a Master's of Fine Arts in Washington State University. And I'm pulling on some of his quotes here, but he moved to the Pacific Northwest in the late 70s, and then he moved pretty rapidly on to Alaska and settled in Ketchikan for I think most of his life. He can correct me if I'm wrong on there, but he started developing these offbeat and quirky and really funny t-shirts that became a hit and started to kind of expand beyond that. Again, anglers were interested in this, cannery workers, commercial fishers, scientists. And he notes that he draws his inspiration from field work and some of the latest discoveries, so he stays on top of that. And then brings sort of a more sort of common focused, street smart sensibility to worlds that are generally devoid of that, such as ichthyology and paleontology. So he has stated that he's going to share the twists and turns of a unique career as an artist and educator. That art has really evolved into a series of exhibits that have been in a whole variety of different venues. He's also co-authored and illustrated 10 books, and he's an avid musician, and maybe by popular demand we can get him up here to do something. He's got 4 albums out with his band called the Ratfish Wranglers. And just to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the accolades he's received just in Alaska, he's received the Alaska Governor's Award for the Arts, honorary doctorate in fine arts from the University of Alaska Southeast. And Ray works quite a bit with Dr. Kirk Johnson, who I believe is at the Smithsonian, a scientist that they collaborate, kind of building off of this idea of collaborative research. And they received a Guggenheim Fellowship to document sort of fossil and paleontology from Baja all the way up to Barrow or Utqiagvik. Ray's appeared on the Discovery Channel. He's lectured at universities. He's also shown work at the Smithsonian. And he noted that his biggest honor was having some species named after him, including a species of ratfish, which is Hydrolagus trolli, and then a genus, unfortunately now extinct, of herring called Trollichthys. And so with that, Ray, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. It's a real honor to be here. And thanks to Lynn and Matt and Liza for those inspiring words. But you've invited an artist to a science meeting, so you've been warned. Careful what you fish for. But I call this talk My Fish-Filled Life, or How I Became an Accidental Science Communicator. I didn't really mean to get into this business, but here I am. So I do have an artistic license, so I can do whatever the heck I want to. And it's valid in Alaska, the cosmos, and beyond. So, when I knew I was going to be talking at a science meeting, I thought I'd just kind of look back at my life and see, where does Ray Troll come from? Who is Ray Troll? And I am the third Ray Troll. Actually, my father is there in this photo on the left in 1945, and that's him there in front of a B-29. And then on the right, there's 4 kids headed to Japan a mere 12 years later. My father was a career Air Force guy, and so I'm the goofy-looking kid there with the arrow pointing at him there. I did have yes, I'm leaning on my big brother there. But the fish thing really started happening for me in Puerto Rico. And when we were stationed down there from 1964 to 67, and this is the scene across the street from us at Ramey Air Force in Puerto Rico. But here is a photograph of these 6 troll kids in Painted Post, New York. And I am the punk right there in the yellow shirt looking at you. But what is really kind of remarkable is that of these 6 troll kids, 4 of them ended up in Alaska. So it's my big brother Tim, who's sitting right over there, who's done a lot of work out in Bristol Bay. And then my sister Kate, who's in Juneau, and my sister Mary, who was here in Anchorage for a number of years. And then the 70s were really good to me. I just like that one. It's really kind of fun, the back and forth there. 1964, look what happened, 1974. So yes, I'm that guy. I'm sitting, that's not Charles Manson on the couch there, but that's me sitting in the back there. This is in Wichita, Kansas in 1974. Yeah, the 70s were very good to me. And then I went to art school. And I'm the very shy guy there in the center in the white coat. And this is in Bethany College in Lindsborg, Kansas. And then I ended up out on the West Coast. I moved to the Seattle area, ended up going to Washington State University, where in 1980 I formed a band with my graduate school professors. So there I am, Zuzu, your solar system is ideal for our purposes. And then lo, 40 years ago now, this is me in 1983, and my sister Kate invited me up to Ketchikan, this little town. I only intended to stay there just for the summer, and there I am with my MFA degree, very proud. It's kind of a joke. I'm sitting there with my degree right there. And I worked at a place called Hallelujah Halibut, and my sister Kate and her husband Bill had started this little seafood shack, and they put me in charge of it. So there I was with my art degree. I didn't know a humpy from a hole in the ground, and I had to quickly study up on fish. And I plunged deep into the world of fish. And luckily, I met this beautiful woman on the right there, my wife Michelle, who's right over there. And fish were beginning to take over my life. And we have 2 wonderful kids. Our son Patrick there in the front, and Patrick's over here filming right now, and our daughter Karina. But where do I come from? What are my influences? So in the 60s, I was really always tuned into Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine was what just lit my world on fire. And then there was another magazine called Cracked, and then along came R. Crumb and Zap Comics. But when you look further back, I want to give you guys a little bit of an art history kind of background here on this art guy. So here's an art talk at a science meeting. But Heinrich Clay, from 1860 to 1945, he was doing these incredible drawings of anthropomorphized creatures. Can I have some water up here? I didn't bring it up here. It's been a while since I've done this. But there I am in Dive Bar. Ratfink, Ed Big Daddy Roth. And what was cool about Ratfink is sort of the antithesis to, there it is, I've got dry mouth. That's much better. So Ratfish was the answer to Mickey Mouse's cuteness. And so I think in some ways, it's what drew me to Ratfish, the similarity, Ratfish, Ratfink. And then, of course, R. Crumb really influenced me a lot. And his study of suburban landscapes. You can see it here in this view of Denver. And of course, pop culture. This is a recent t-shirt, Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. And then Frank Zappa. This is my ill-advised attempt at humor with Frank Zappa. Wild Puffins Rip My Flesh. This was not the most popular t-shirt, but I thought it was kind of cool. Then Henry Rousseau from the 1800s, a surrealist, impressionist surrealist. And this is my little take on Henry Rousseau's Humpies. And here we have Salvador Dali and Salvador Dali Varden. Giorgio de Chirico from 1914. So my art has actually been described as scientific surrealism, and I kind of like that description because I love the dreamlike imagery that the surrealists relied upon, and so there's a sense of humor sometimes, like this one by Rene Magritte. This is not a pipe. And here you see, this is not a pike. Yes. Oh, this would never actually made it as a t-shirt. It was just too obscure. The Scream by Edvard Munch. I love this art history at the science meeting. So here we go, Galen Hansen in 1980. So I went to WSU and I studied with Galen Hansen, and an extraordinary painter. He's still kicking away. He's nearing 100 years old now. But Galen's work, you can see this is my painting on the left there, the Kingfisher, the Raven, and the Half Moon Run, and sort of the same kind of clouds and things that Galen used too. But this is one of my most popular images. There isn't a week that goes by where I'm not asked to, can I use this in a lecture? Can we use this at our museum? But this is, I just drew the geologic ages, and I made it kind of fun. But you can see from my time in Kansas, and you don't have to go very far from anywhere really to see the signs of the ocean. In ancient Kansas, it was a vast seaway. So that is basically a big pile of plankton there. So in western Kansas, 80 million years old. Peter Bruegel, 1557, there is no free lunch. That's what inspired this. And this is his etching from way back in the 1500s, big fish eat little fish. It kind of echoes that whole thing of the food chain, big fish eating little fish. But then you can take that, as a lesson for life. And what is incredible about living in Ketchikan now for 40 years is that the view out our front window is reminiscent of The Hunters in the Snow by Peter Bruegel. It always just blows me away. We live in one of the most beautiful spots in the world in southeast Alaska. The Book of Hours, circa 1475, illuminated manuscripts, The Dark Night of the Soul. This one has not been released as a t-shirt yet. I'm trying it out on you for the first time, gauging your response. Yeah? Okay. Thank you for that. But what's weird is that, just a few years ago, I came across this wonderful illustration. Actually, one of my Italian friends sent me this image from Pompeii. And it's like Ray Troll from 79 AD. It's like, what? Look at that. It's got the same sort of borders and things, and it's just this fish-filled, composition. And it's so, I guess I've been around for 2,000 years, reincarnated. The Winter of Our Fish Content. Albrecht Dürer, 1514. And I've really been into Dürer over the years and absolutely love his work, his engravings in particular. And he was not the most positive thinking kind of guy. This is a woodcut that he did in 1498 when everybody thought the world was coming to an end. And he was sort of the Ray Troll of the print world in that these woodcuts were everywhere, and it was the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And I did that drawing when I was 21 years old in 1975 with ballpoint pen. And another cheerful t-shirt. The painting on the right there is supposedly by Michelangelo, but don't let the bastards grind you down. Next time you have to deal with the bureaucracy. Music is Life, Hieronymus Bosch. Giuseppe Arcimbaldo from 1556. So that's from 1556, but I decided to do my own version of it, like with Pacific fishes and a few, a coelacanth or two in there as well, but there's a lovely lump sucker as an earring in there. I really love that one. And then the great Nordic filmmaker, the Scandinavian filmmaker, Ingmar Bergman, The Seventh Seal. Death and Cheerios, inspired from that great movie. And then, of course, I never can resist a bad pun. There's The Seventh Seal right there. That's a new one. Huh? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ah, yes. That met with your seal of approval. Now, here's an artist that I think you really should know about. And this was a German-born Russian naturalist artist that was on board some of the early Russian exploring ships up here in the Pacific Northwest. They actually did they circumnavigated the globe. But Alexander Postels in 1827 did this beautiful lithograph in Sitka of the kelp. And you can see that I was directly inspired by that with my t-shirt, Preserve the Balance, there on the right. And I really looked far and wide to see if I could find more work by Alexander Postels, because it's just this exquisite draftsmanship. And this is one that he did of the forest, and that's my t-shirt there, on the left, the Ancient Forest Forever, and then Alexander Postel's vision, a lithograph done in Sitka as well in 1827. And taking my inspiration too, you know, and really being so inspired by the Alaskan native cultures up here and the powerful artwork that's been made up here for thousands of years, I've taken the opportunity and really embraced it a couple times to work with native artists directly, and this is with my friend Donnie Varnell, who is a Haida artist, and I suggested to him, we got this commission. This is a 9 by 12 foot wooden panel, and the local junior high school has this piece, and we did a joint proposal. Their mascot is the Knights, so I had this idea, why don't we take some Western art and just kind of give it a Northwest flair? Donnie, you do you, and I'll do me, but from our cultural backgrounds. And so I drew a little bit, and then he drew a little bit, and then we carved and painted the whole thing. And here we are in my studio. And it was really a fun project working with Donnie. And then early on, when I first moved to Ketchikan, Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian peoples there, but there's a local totem pole that was being recarved by Israel Shotridge. And Israel and I became friends as he worked on this massive, beautiful pole that tells the story of the creation of salmon. And I got to know him and his family, and then when the pole was raised in 1989, we came up with the idea to actually do a poster that was given out at the potlatch so I met with his family and the elders from his family, and we did this poster that was given out, and this is the Daughter of Fog. But Ernst Haeckel, who was German, maybe Austrian, but he was a scientist, an evolutionary scientist, and a very interesting guy, but he did these beautiful, beautiful illustrations that have been widely published, art forms in nature. But that's inspired me. That's my drawing of trilobites there on the right. Oops. We just lost power. There I am. And I told you the 70s were good to me. So that was a phase I went through, but it's kind of weird how I look a whole lot like Ernst Haeckel there. And I was really into wearing camel teeth at the time, and I was rocking this goatee. But this is an evolutionary tree that Ernst Haeckel did in 1879. There's my own version of the family tree. But I did spend part of my youth in Japan, and this is one of my first public pieces I did in 1986, Midnight Run. But I think you can see just somewhere in my memory banks, Japan was really informing what I was doing. And that's Hakusai's The Wave off Kanagawa. So, in the spirit of shamelessly name dropping, here's Drew Barrymore, and there's my art in the movie Big Miracle. They needed some 1980s vintage Alaskan art, and they found me. So this is a drawing, an engraving on the left there by Robert Flood, who was actually an English physician. He was a doctor, medical doctor, but he was fascinated by the occult and astrology and all kinds of things. He was a man of science, and he was a doctor, but he did a whole series of engravings trying to express the unity of man with nature and the different levels, the way we find inspiration from the natural world. And so that's my drawing that's kind of inspired by Flood's work. And this is at the Smithsonian, the Ocean Hall, and it shows the salmon life cycle and all the number of species that depend upon it, on salmon, this miraculous fish that spends its life in the ocean, comes back. And this is another way I've tried to express this eternal salmon. This is what I call this eternal salmon that feeds us. And if we know how to manage these fisheries, that eternal sustainability will be there. So, trying to take these complex ideas and put them into one sort of image that you can read at a glance, I think this one kind of expresses that. But this is a poster I did for NOAA in the early 90s, Sustainability, It's in Our Hands. And what's mind-blowing too is our origin, only one ocean, our breath, our life, every other breath we take is from the ocean. And I spent a couple of months just drawing nothing but plankton. And sometimes I just sit down, like when I did the Haeckel-inspired trilobite pattern or ammonites. I decided to spend a couple of months just drawing plankton and phytoplankton and zooplankton, and then reaching out to scientists that work on plankton and getting my mind around this idea of this nightly or diel vertical migration, which is phenomenal, really, when you think every night these creatures come up from the planktonic creatures come up from the deep, and the phytoplankton are moving toward the surface in the daytime, enjoying that sunshine, and then at night, in the daytime, those creatures go back down. So it's really like the heartbeat of the planet when you think about it. It's the biggest migration that happens on Earth every day. So it's really like the beating heart of our planet. The mandala of Amadeus in the 1800s, and here's some more shameless. There, look at that, Seth Rogen and my mandala, psychedelic. This is a piece I did for the American Fisheries Society meeting here in 2005 in Anchorage. Seiners, trollers, gillnetters, and longliners feeding the world. And this is the beautiful view from Michelle and I's house in the hill in Ketchikan. I only intended to stay for a summer, and I'm still there. And one thing led to another, and my career took off from there. But what happened was that I was brought to Alaska to be a fishmonger, didn't know anything about fish, had to study up on it, I was selling fish, but I had landed in the middle of this kind of almost invisible fish culture, a very strong fish culture. And began to realize too that most of my neighbors had opinions and knew a lot about salmon and the migration, the patterns, and I realized that a lot of my friends were biologists, they were, but they were also like citizen scientists. And I think that's a very unique thing about Alaska is that everybody, because we are dependent upon the ocean so much, that it is, science permeates the Alaskan culture. Fish are synonymous with Alaska. And I just became so fascinated with the topic. I kept going with it. I dove deeper into it. I had to study up on it, but I was fascinated all along. And I also worked in the slime line a little bit. And I got out my little fish ID books and my ichthyology books, and there's a ray troll, actually with hair, and started just drawing these things. There's color pencil on black paper, began to catch the fish, and just reveling in these just marvelous creatures that I was finding and killing, too. It was very strange to kill these beautiful fish. Something as magnificent, Sebastes ruborimus. Sebastes means magnificent, the Latin names. So here it is, I killed this beautiful fish, and it may have been 80 to 100 years old. But there I am, very proudly showing it off, but also simultaneously I felt really guilty. What have I done? Because I'm a sensitive artist guy. This is madness. But really, they're so delicious. So wherever there's, tension, conflict, it makes interesting art. This is the almost inappropriate picture of me with my very first king salmon. And this was gifted to me I was, from the ocean, went fishing with a friend. And the very first time I went salmon fishing, and in 5 minutes, I landed this 41-pound king salmon. That was life-altering. Just blew my mind, and I fell deeper in love with the fish. And I began to do these t-shirts. There I am with a mustache, my mustache phase, very brief. Let's spawn. And I was inspired by the salmon and this incredible transformation they go through. And it's all about love and death and sex and darkness. And I came up with this image, spawn till you die. And somehow it hits the zeitgeist just right, because it started showing up in places. Motley Crue, Mick Mars, he's rocking one. There in the movie Superbad, see it in the background? There it is. We know he's really super bad. He's in the bad guy's den there, because there it is in the background. Man, look, Harry Potter. Harry Potter is rocking one on Broadway, Spawn Till You Die. So this has all been happening. The t-shirt empire started taking off, and Michelle has been operating the Soho Coho on Creek Street in Ketchikan, where there's a great run of salmon. We've had that store for 30 years now, and there's this wonderful run of wild humpies and dog salmon that are run up the creek there, and the occasional king salmon too, and steelhead. And this is my studio in the snow, and here are some of the more recent hits. Return of the Sockeye, The Empire Strikes Bass, Dead Man's Reach, Served in Bed, Raises the Dead, Rebel Without a Cod. I've learned that the James Dean family owned the legal rights to his face. So they threatened me with a lawsuit, and I said, okay, you win. So I did this. But if you look closely, you'll see him in the background there. Let's see, there. Let's see, he's still in there. There he is, right there. Fishing for compliments. Hey, man, things could be worse. Life is good, death is not bad. Was popular with hospice, not too many other people. Can't help it, I'm a realist though, come on. The Real Alaska, bear attack at art opening. So one of the things I've done too, as I hang out with scientists and I go deeper and deeper into these topics, and I was once asked to talk at a bear conference, not knowing much of anything about bears, but I know about geologic time and evolutionary relationships, and just started asking people, and I started actually doing a tally. I took 100 people and asked them, what are bears' closest relatives? And I bet you I could run this again and again and again and just find the same results each time. That there are even pigs. Pigs are a popular answer, but only 3% got it right. Seals and sea lions and walruses are the closest living relatives of the bears. So I draw these evolutionary trees just like Ernst Haeckel did, just to show these relationships so you can see them at a glance. And if you look down the tree, evolution is maybe not as simple as tree diagrams. There's beginning to be new thinking that's more like a river and it flows back into itself. But when you go back down the bear family tree, I started looking at seals completely different, like those are the bears that started working the deep end of the creek, you know? And you can really see the similarities. So that they did have a common ancestor where one of them took to the ocean and the other stayed on the land. So I like just dropping those little fun facts that kind of change the way people look at the world. Or there's just silly stuff like this. The Da Vinci Cod, Mona was a cannery girl. This one does some good in the world if you must smoke smoked salmon. Blues in the Key of C. Got ink. Pulp fishing. But I do come around to science communication. This is a flat out science communication. This was a NOAA lab in Pacific Grove right near Monterey. Just right down the coast from Monterey Bay Aquarium. A big bunker of a building, but NOAA had their fish labs in there, and they wanted to really relay the science that was going on in that building. And so I came up with this idea of blue seas and green seas. The greener seas being more productive seas, colored by the plankton and the changing climates, and then warmer seas being blue, and this cycle that was happening. And so as you go around the building, it actually loops it all together. It's 250 feet long, the whole mural. Also doing things like painting buses, hand painting buses with some of my colleagues, my assistants, and Memo Haragi and I painted this. It's my favorite thing at Ketchikan. When you hit the brakes, the halibut eyes light up. So it's hand painted. Big mural projects. This one is at the University of Washington in the fish building there, the fisheries building. And recently too, actually in your programs, we kind of remixed this with some of the other art, and there's now going to be a 70-foot long version of this at the Seattle Aquarium in about a month. Really looking forward to that, because I worked with a digital artist by the name of Grace Freeman, and we used some of my other artworks, and we're going to output that to 70 feet. I'm really looking forward to that. But as was mentioned by Matt earlier, I've done these collaborations. I've known this guy by the name of Kirk Johnson for about 30 years now. And we just instantly hit it off. He's a paleobotanist. He's now the director of the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, which still blows my mind, but friends in high places, I guess. But yeah, he's been at that job for 10 years now. And this is our first book, Cruising the Fossil Freeway, and we became pals, but he's the artist and I'm the scientist. There we are, kind of joined at the brain, I guess. And this is our second book, Cruising the Fossil Coastline. And in this book, we traveled from Southern California, actually Baja California, all the way up through Alaska, and just doing fossil sites along the way. And that became a traveling exhibit. But here it is, the scientist and the artist. So I've had this long relationship with him. And these are his totemic animals, if you will. At the top there, a walrus and an ammonite. He's a real walrus fanatic. He's obsessed with them. And ammonites, he can't get enough of them either. They are extinct members of the cephalopods. And my totemic animals, trilobites and ratfish. And his 7-word biography is Coastal Creationist Kid Finds Rocks in Evolution. Mine is Kansas Hippie Paints Fish in the Rain. And this is from the Fossil Coastline book, and I did this fossil map with Kirk's assistants and a few other scientists to help out with that. All these incredible fossil sites all over Alaska and the Yukon. And this did evolve into a traveling museum exhibit. This is Ryan Kenny from the Anchorage Museum, and they sponsored this exhibit. It's still on the road. It's been to 6 major museums, and there's the trilobite couch we had in that. Now it's at my brother Tim's house. And it's the world's only trilobite couch. There's not much demand for them, but so anyways, in this relationship that I've had with Kirk, and knowing that I was going to talk at this, begin to just think, what is an artist doing here at this science meeting? And, am I kind of half scientist, or am I an artist, or am I both? But I kind of thought about Kirk's characteristics, or just characteristics that you might use to describe a scientist, and I thought it'd be interesting to put them side by side and to read through them with you. So a scientist and an artist, left brain and right brain. Scientist, mind, artist heart. The scientist explains, the artist expresses. And actually, we don't need to explain our art ever. The more mysterious, the better. I will not tell you about it, it's there in my artwork. Scientists are realists, artists are dreamers. Scientists are serious, whimsical artists. Scientists are calm, artists are tortured. Scientists are unfeeling, we artists are very sensitive. And scientists can be somewhat, distant. We can be in your face. Scientists are very rational, we're emotional. You guys are analytical, I'm intuitive. So I'm characterizing all of you now. You guys are calculating, I'm impulsive. You guys are neutral, I'm provocative. You guys are into numbers, I'm into pictures. You're aloof and I'm engaging. You guys are apathetic and I am passionate. You're very organized, I'm chaotic. I wasn't ready for this talk. Needed some water, but now I'm okay. Cerebral, I'm visceral. You guys are stoic, I'm very moody. You guys are very structured and I'm whatever. Words, images. But what you guys put into words and data, I try to put into images. And I try to convey it as simply as I can in a very succinct image, But like I said, I can't be restricted. I got to do do whatever. But here's where we cross over, and I had fun doing this little list. Art and science crossover. We're both considered intellectuals. That's very cool. But we're also both curiosity-based researchers. We explore the world. We question authority. That's our role. We have to, challenge the status quo. We both value innovation. We both experiment. Run the experiments. Find out the data. You see what the data is telling you. We both foster fascination. And I think that's very important in this world these days. We both foster fascination. We both expand knowledge in our own ways. We both are seekers. We both make presentations. We both need an audience. We are idea generators. We both cultivate creativity. We try to figure out the universe, no small task. Both have the same enemies. Think about that. Anti-science is on the rise. Pseudoscience is on the rise. We have the same enemies. Apathy is on the rise. Passion, irrationality. It's a dangerous time. We need calm heads, and we need to express these things very clearly. Excuse me, get heavy for a second. We're both prone to obsession, both shape everyday life, which is really cool. We reveal universal truths, and we were usually the last ones picked for the team. When we were kids. Maybe not now. Maybe I'll be on the team now. I don't know. So I do a podcast called Paleo Nerds, and on that we have paleontologists, ichthyologists, writers, and things. So it's a shameless plug for the podcast. Try to have fascinating folks on. We just had Kelly Benoit Bird from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. She was the one telling me about the diurnal vertical migration, and I had to know more about that. And then she casually mentioned that the most populous vertebrate on our planet are the humble little bristle mouse, about like yay. But they outnumber us in the millions. All humans, all our chickens and goats and cattle all combined, we're nothing compared to planet bristlemouth. It's their planet. It's not really about us. They're down there in the mesopelagic by the trillions, everywhere. And another fun fact that I try to, point out to folks too, the closest relatives to whales in the mammal world, hippopotamus. Makes you look at whales a little differently. It's like, they have the last common ancestor with hippopotamus, which is pretty mind-blowing. But it really was this beautiful idea that Darwin conceived of at about the same time that Alfred Lord Wallace did as well, this idea of evolution, that we all came from one source of life. And it was an extraordinary idea, and that it's all one thing. We're all related at some level to everything else in the world. And so I did this, this is what we ended the book with, Cruising the Fossil Coastline. And I worked with a bunch of Stanford biologists sorting every little branch out on this tree here and where it occurs, but this incredible gift of life and how, like I said, it just, speaks to my little hippie heart. We're all one, man. And that's really beautiful. And when you think about it, and you think about your place in the evolutionary tree of life, and you guys are studying fish, well, vertebrates are just variations on fish. And really, we are wayward fish. We are of the lobe-fin Sarcopterygian group that left the water all those years ago. Millions of years ago, about 375 million years ago, our fishy ancestors crawled onto shore and became the amphibians, the reptiles, the birds, the dinosaurs, mammals, us, primates. And when you go up that tree, and we are not the crown of creation, we're just part of this vast, ever-expanding tree of life. But there we are, humans up there, a variation of one of the great apes, and the very strange and mysterious colugos. Very few people know about those as the closest relatives to primates, which is mind-blowing. But there we are, humans, part of this great interconnected web. And whenever you pull anywhere on that web, it affects something else. And what a challenge you guys have in figuring out that vast ocean out there and how it really does sustain us and how we are trying to do the right thing by it. So with that, Alaska, keep it chill. Fish worship, it ain't wrong. Thank you.